Have you ever boarded a cab and checked for a child lock? This tiny button right next to the driver's seat can give the driver the power to trap you. Unable to open a door or roll down a window.
When I lock the driver's door, it locks all the other doors and you can hear a distinct snap sound. You can hear it again, and now all doors are locked. Now, effectively at this point, even though the lock has been enabled, if the child lock is disabled, you can still open the door at your own will. However, regardless of whether the central lock door, whether the doors are centrally locked or not, if the child lock is enabled, there's no way you can open that door.
Is there any way to get out of a car if the child lock is enabled, if the central locking system is enabled, and if the power windows are not working?
Well, it would have to be a drastic action, something like breaking the glass, which is not the easiest thing in the world.
That's the kind of power a child lock gives the driver. But is this necessary in a taxi?
The best way out can be to disable it in the taxi passing and let it remain as it is in the private passing.
So when we use commercial vehicle like Uber and Ola, so there should not be a child lock.
I think it's definitely a threat for women's safety, and for cabs and for other public vehicles, I think it should be removed.
Instead of banning child locks, we should find some ways, some other ways for safety.
लॉक के इधर कुछ मार्क ऐसा करना चाहिए कि ये लॉक अनलॉक कैसे किया जाता है, तो उससे महिलाओं के, और मुझे लगता है महिलाओं को भी बहुत से सारे पता है, अगर कार में बैठती है तो साजिक है उनको भी पता होगा.
A foolproof device to ensure the safety of your child can be misused by wrongdoers, raising questions about the need for such a device in commercial vehicles. Mirror Now report.
You're watching The Urban Debate on Mirror Now. I'm Fee D'Souza. Thank you for joining us. There is a reason why we're talking about this today. The rape and murder of Pune software engineer Nayana Pujari created ripples all across the country. 3 convicts have now been sentenced to death by a court in Pune. But you must remember that Naina Pujari was an IT employee who finished work, much like you and I and our loved ones do. She got into a fleet car from her office. She was headed home. The driver of that car kidnapped her. And 2 days later, her body was discovered. Most of the crimes that are committed against women in cars with a commercial registration, so taxis, whether they're aggregated taxis, whether they're fleet taxis, any sort, when you get into a car that is not yours, those crimes we've discovered are often committed by taking advantage of one small button. That button is the child lock facility available on most cars. The question is, can incidents like the one that took place in the case of Naina be averted? Mirror Now spent some time looking at it, and we discovered that a lot of people in this country don't know about the child lock feature. That a lot of drivers are taking advantage of the child lock feature to trap their victims. We're not saying all of them are doing it, but once is enough. If you get caught out once not having checked the child lock before you got into the car, once is enough. It's scary. If the child lock is on and you get into the back of a car, you cannot open the door from the inside. You cannot roll down the window from the inside. You are at the mercy of the person in the driver's seat. We want to, through this show, first of all, create awareness among everyone. And I want you today, if you're watching, to tell everyone you know, if they get into a car that is a commercial vehicle, stop first when you open the door, check for the child lock button. Make sure child lock is off. It'll take a minute. Give yourself that minute and only then get into the car. Once you get into the car and close the door, you cannot do anything else after that. Our second demand is that governments, and we understand that the government of India right now at the union level is working on a policy for taxis that governments insist that point number one, a sticker be placed on the car that instructs every individual to check for the child lock before they get in, or number two, they pass a mandate that if a car is going to have a commercial registration, that the child lock facility be dismantled altogether. That's what we're talking about tonight, and I'm talking about this because I want each and every one of you to have as much information about this as possible, because it's that small button is the difference between life and death for all of us. Joining me on the show this evening, Abhijeet Pujari, Naina Pujari's husband in Pune. Thank you for being part of this show. Balraj Bhanot is the ex-director of the Automotive Research Association of India. ND Mulla is the retired DCP Crime, Bangalore. Yogesh Verma is the spokesperson of the BJP. Swati Sharma is a fashion blogger who regularly uses this type of taxis. Priyadarshan Bavikar is the principal correspondent at Autocar India. He's a car expert. Nikita Anand is a model. I want to welcome all of you to the show. I want to start with Abhijeet Pujari. Abhijeet Pujari, I know that you've been through a lot and you've fought a lot. But somehow we understand that safety measures have not really changed. You've got justice now from the courts. What do you want from the governments to make sure that other women don't suffer the same fate?
Obviously, and thank you. जैसे कि आपने बोला अभी गवर्नमेंट को एक स्ट्रिक्टली एक्शंस लेना चाहिए रिगार्डिंग द सेफ्टी ऑफ वुमेन्स, क्योंकि जैसे आपने एक अभी थोड़ी देर पहले आपने बोला कि 10 चाइल्ड लॉक एक्चुअली दिस इज फॉर द मीन्स दोज कैब्स हु आर कैरिंग द मीन्स एम्प्लॉयज, लेडीज एम्प्लॉयज टू देयर मीन्स होम टू कंपनी एंड कंपनी टू होम. Actually, this is like a trap, and by this trap, I lost Naina. It's a truth कि ये बोलना सही है कि obviously अगर उस कार में लॉक नहीं होता तो obviously आज नैना मेरे साथ होती. तो मुझे लगता है कि ऐसी छोटी छोटी चीज़ों के लिए जो भी सर्विस कार्स है, कैब्स है, ओला कैब्स है, उबेर्स है, या जो कंपनी में एक्चुअली कैब्स रहती है उनके लिए चाइल्ड लॉक होना ज़रूरी नहीं है. और दूसरी बात जो आपने मुझे कही कि गवर्नमेंट को लाइक जीपीआरएस सिस्टम्स, लेडीज सिक्योरिटी, जो कि लेडीज़ को छोड़ने के लिए जाती है क्या उसमें होना ज़रूरी है. ये बहुत सारी हम लोगों ने सुना है, देखा है और चर्चा भी की है इसमें कि ऐसी बहुत सारी जो भी बोलते हैं हम लोग इम्प्लीमेंटेशंस होनी चाहिए, लेकिन अभी तक मुझे नहीं लगता है कि इट्स हैपन. It's implemented completely or 100% it's implemented. Otherwise, these crimes are still stop here, but it's continued.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the sentiment that Abhijeet brings to this panel, to everybody on this panel. The fact that if it weren't for child lock on that taxi, Abhijeet's wife would now be with him today. I think we should let that digest for a second before we move forward. Priyadarshan Bavikar, who is an auto expert. I know you spent some time with our correspondent today talking to her about child lock. Once we get into the car, if the child lock is on, Priyadarshan, is there anything we can do? Can we override the child lock in any way?
The system is designed to be foolproof, to keep children from opening the door when the car is moving or when they're inside the car at the back. Unfortunately, there's nothing which can be done to open the door directly. You could roll the window down and maybe reach for the handle from the outside. That's an option. But if the window lock has been enabled, of course, you can't do that in a power window car.
And one assumes that if there is a taxi driver heinous enough to have child locked the car, which is something that has to be done manually, so he's done it for a reason, he will automatically lock the windows as well, which means you can't scream, nobody can hear you. You can't roll down the window, you can't open the door, you can't jump out of the moving car or at a traffic signal. You're effectively trapped, you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's a system which has been designed for a function which is actually quite noble to think about it, but then...
But completely inapplicable in India.
To a large extent, it is applicable because if you're traveling with children in the car, you don't want them to randomly open doors.
But to be fair, I mean, we're talking specifically about taxis, and in our country, we travel with children on the back of scooters and motorcycles, sometimes sitting on the petrol tank. And here we have something that can cause tremendous pain. And we have Abhijeet Pujari sitting on the panel saying that child lock costed him his loved one.
The thing is, it is a tool for a certain purpose. I understand that. It's like having a knife. A knife can be used as a tool to cut your vegetables, but it can also be used to stab somebody. And it is horrible to say this, I know. I mean, it is not right what happened. But of course, there can be certain measures which can be taken to prevent something like this from happening in the future.
All right, so I just want to bring in all of the voices right now. Mr. Mulla, this is this something that worries you? Were you already aware of the fact that child lock was so dangerous in cars?
Yeah, you see, all improvement in the technologies are made with the sole purpose of providing facilities to certain individuals. Definitely child lock and the window lock, whatever called, it's if the driver locks it, both the windows and the doors are locked, and person sitting on the rear seat or on the left hand side cannot open it. I agree with that. But unfortunately, all the cars manufactured are not manufactured for the purpose of taxis. So it is a universal rule that child lock should be there for the safety of the children and family members. Number one. Having said that, now there are up to number of incidents wherein this drivers
Mr. Mulla, forgive me for interrupting you. Here's my question. I understand that cars are not manufactured as taxis, but they are registered as taxis. And in a lot of states, when a car is registered as a taxi, they have to actually switch to CNG. That is a lot of modification. That's a heavy modification to make when you switch from diesel to petrol and you have to modify it into a CNG car. Why can't we just remove child lock? Is it very difficult? Why can't that be done?
No. You see, it is always not the single woman who travel in the cars. Sometimes families do travel and mischief can happen. Then we come, the public outcry will be there that why child lock was not there.
Mr. Mulla, families in India travel in auto rickshaws that don't even have doors.
Nevertheless,
I think if you give us a choice, we would prefer that they not have child lock at all. I don't buy that argument. And also, let me give you another argument. Child lock, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll go to the auto experts, was designed for children sitting alone in the back because the parents were driving. Now, when we get into a taxi, the parents are sitting with the child and they will hold the child in their laps and make sure that the child doesn't open the door. Now, argue with that, Mr. Mulla. Let's be practical. Let's be practical. Child locks have to be mandatorily removed from all taxis because they can cost us lives.
I'm coming to that. You interfered with my suggestion. What they can do, they can provide another system wherein the provision of opening that lock should always be there with the passenger as well. So at times whenever required, the passenger, if she is a lonely woman, can always open. But as a matter of precaution, I will tell you, no technology can ever protect anyone for that matter, unless the man or woman protect themselves. So it is, some precautions are to be taken by individuals traveling in the taxis. What I find by and large, these application taxis are safe enough. Unfortunately, some incidents have taken place, and as and when things improve, as and when we progress, I think these systems will come into being. But right now, as you rightly suggested, there should be an option for the passenger, particularly when it is a woman, to open the window, roll down the window, or open the door at least. That provision should be there.
Mr. Mulla suggesting is that the override switch have its own second override switch. Should we override the override? Balraj Bhanot is the ex-director of the Automotive Research Association of India. Mr. Bhanot, thank you for joining us. Can we override the override, or should we just remove child lock?
Well, I remember this law was introduced more than 12 to 13 years ago when I was the director in the Automotive Research Institute. I was also the chairman of the CMVR Technical Committee where the laws are made. And at that time, the question was only to protect the children who are sitting at the back. And no thought was given that it can be misused by the commercial people, which is happening today, which was not the case earlier. Because in the earlier days, there was not a necessity to have a child lock. And this was introduced somewhere 2002, 2003, my memory goes all right. But looking at the show, I certainly think there is a need to go for an override. That means such commercial vehicles which are used for passenger transport, which are commercially used and registered, this particular facility should be disabled. It should be mandatory. I will go by that word, because every year there is a fitness certificate which is obtained by all commercial vehicles, and it should be checked by the RTO when he issues the fitness certificate that the child lock is disabled or not. It should be removed, and that should not be in the commercial vehicles at all. And I think there is a need to change this thing, and we should take it up with the Ministry of Surface Transport, who is the chairman of the CMVR committee, that they should amend the law. And not only that, also introduce this particular checklist in the Rule 62, which covers the fitness test which is to be given for the commercial vehicles every year, that the child lock should not be there for that. Not only that, I'll go a step further. You must have seen in this that the mirror, that your glass cannot be brought down nowadays.
Yes.
And there are some of the vehicles are there is no override. If the glasses are on, you can't bring them down. That is also a big danger. And nowadays the talk is going on to provide a mandatory override on that also. I'll stop at that.
Thank you, sir. That's very well said. That obviously taxis have to have a fitness test, and it should be made mandatory. There should be no argument about it, that all of these child locks facilities be taken out of taxis entirely. I want to bring in Nikita Anand. Nikita Anand, as a woman residing in this country, and we've gotten so used to using these taxis, but we've also gotten used to listening to stories and reading about stories where there's molestation, there's rape, there's kidnapping, there's all kinds of horrid things that happen to women who get into taxis by themselves. Is it, do you think, mandatory right now for the government and the Ministry of Road and Transport and Highways, Mr. Nitin Gadkari is working on rules, that it absolutely must remove child lock from all taxis on priority?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Being a woman myself, and not often, but yes, there are instances when, rare instances when I do need to take a cab when I have, a conveyance issue otherwise. And it is a very, very scary thought. The fact that I know my life is in someone else's hands when you have a child lock that has been enabled. And it must be disabled for the very fact that and I agree with you as well, that the child lock has been provided simply to make sure that a child does not open the door. But when you're talking about who's sitting on the rear seat, it absolutely is of no use. And in fact, in certain cases, like, the premise of this debate as well, it will be misused. And there are umpteen number of cases of atrocities that are being happening on women. And this definitely is something that the government can do away with. This is mandatory and it must be done as soon as possible.
Right, Nikita Anand, thank you so much. Very well said. Stay with us, because I think it's important for women like us to share examples and share stories of what we go through. We also have Swati Sharma. Swati Sharma is a fashion blogger. Swati Sharma, Nikita Anand just talked about how the occasional, we all at some point occasionally want to be able to use a taxi without fearing for our lives. This is absolutely mandatory, and it's scary that child lock can cost us our lives.
Yes, I think I would want to put these strong 3 points which totally affect the safety of women. Absolutely no child locks, because Ola should definitely not have a child lock, as it is a breeding opportunity for corrupt activities. In case a child is traveling, this needs to be conveyed to the traveler that this is the foremost responsibility of the parents to take care of the child. Secondly, contact details should not be shared with the drivers. I mean, there should be a protocol or a code of affirmation to avoid the circumstances where a contact details and address is reached out to drivers on every random booking. I mean, who is going to guarantee that our safety with the driver when he's off duty? He still has our information, right? Then third would be live surveillance system. There needs to be a tracking system wherein all our friends and family can track a ride. In case of emergency, we should have a call out button wherein a family can track where we are. And there needs to be substations of such security where the surveillance can be carried out all around the country.
That's very well said, and we're going to put that on our docket that we're going to forward to the government. Absolutely. I want to thank Yogesh Verma for listening so patiently to everybody. Yogesh Verma, we've put forward a lot of requests. We do understand that Mr. Nitin Gadkari, who's the Minister of Surface Transport, is working on a taxi policy guideline that they began working on in December. Is it possible for the government to right now, and will you take this to the government for us, for the government to right now include this child lock request that we're making? We also have Nikita and we have Swati who've put forward some very, very valid points. Can we take this forward to the government? Will the government listen to us?
बिल्कुल, मुझे लगता है कि उन्होंने बहुत अच्छे सुझाव दिए हैं और विमेंस सेफ्टी ये हमारा सबसे पहला काम है और दो तरह की बातें हैं. एक तो है टेक्नोलॉजी. जैसे जैसे नई टेक्नोलॉजी आएगी, जैसे जैसे नई चीज़ें आएंगी, उसके फॉल्ट्स और रूपोल्स मालूम पड़ते रहेंगे. मुझे लगता है कि सबसे पहले अवेयरनेस ये बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है कि जो भी लेडी गाड़ी में बैठे, अगर वो बहुत जल्दबाजी नहीं करे और 1 मिनट में उसको चेक कर सकती है जब तक, और वो ये होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. इसकी अवेयरनेस सब जगह फैलना ये बहुत ज़रूरी है. वरना मैं 2-3 चीज़ें देख रहा था कि जैसे समझो कभी 2-3 बच्चे ट्रैवल करें तो वो उनका क्या होगा. तो ये भी एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. एक समाज के अंदर ये जो विकृति है महिलाओं के प्रति, तो इलाज तो दिमाग का होना चाहिए. लॉक का इलाज भी होना चाहिए, लेकिन इलाज सबसे पहले दिमाग का होना चाहिए. और ये जो समाज में हर दूसरा, ये लोग जो होते हैं वो हैबिचुअल कोई क्रिमिनल रिकॉर्ड या हिस्ट्री शीटर्स नहीं होते. ये समाज के ऐसे वर्गों से आते हैं जो चेहरे से मालूम भी नहीं पड़ता है कि आगे जा करके कितना बड़ा वैसी व्यक्ति निकलने वाला है. तो मुझे लगता है कि सबसे पहले तो ये अवेयरनेस भी आनी चाहिए. दूसरा, जब सब महिलाओं की और हमारी बहनों की डिमांड है कि ये चाइल्ड लॉक हटना चाहिए, तो मुझे लगता है कि इसके ऊपर तुरंत कार्रवाई करके और इस चाइल्ड लॉक को बिल्कुल हटाना चाहिए. और जहाँ से भी कोई छोटी सी भी ऐसी चीज़ समझ में आए कि इसकी वजह से कोई बड़ा हादसा हो सकता है, कोई बड़ी दुर्घटना हो सकती है और कोई उसका गलत फ़ायदा उठा सकता है, तो मुझे लगता है कि मेरा भी ये मत है कि चाइल्ड लॉक बिल्कुल तुरंत का तुरंत इसको हटाना चाहिए. और जब तक ये पॉलिसी आए, सरकारी काम है वो आते आते आएगा, तो ये अवेयरनेस भी होने चाहिए कि जो भी महिला टैक्सी में बैठे तो कृपया वो चाइल्ड लॉक को चेक कर ले. आजकल तो मैं देखता हूँ कि ओला के अंदर
हम ये भी कह रहे हैं योगेश वर्मा की गवर्नमेंट की ये भी मैंडेट करे कि सारे टैक्सीज में एक बड़ा सा एक स्टिकर लगे. हाँ. जिसमें लिखा होगा कि बैठने से पहले एक बार चाइल्ड लॉक को चेक कीजिए. This is a quick solution. This can be done immediately. This will be done for awareness. It will point at where the lock is and say, make sure this lock is open, at least until a time when we can pass a mandate or we can pass some sort of regulation saying that remove the child lock completely. In the meantime, we can at least ask for a sticker. That should be really, really easy to do. Abhijeet Pujari, आपने अभी भी सुना कि योगेश वर्मा ने क्या कहा. योगेश वर्मा is from the BJP. Do you want to add something else to the list that we will send to the government on behalf of citizens of this country on taxi safety? Abhijeet Pujari.
या उन्होंने बिल्कुल सही कहा. एक्चुअली जो उन्होंने बातें की सही में उसको इम्प्लीमेंट होना चाहिए. एक्चुअली गवर्नमेंट को सर्विस कैब या कमर्शियल कैब है उनके बारे में ऐसा जो बोला उन्होंने कि वुमेन सेफ्टी के लिए चाइल्ड लॉक निकालना चाहिए. इट्स रियली ट्रू. मुझे लगता है कि समहाउ कई % में ऐसे हादसे होने से वो बच सकते हैं. और बहुत सारी इसमें चीज़ें हैं कि जैसे कि द क्रिमिनल रिकॉर्ड शुड बी चेक बाय द ड्राइवर्स एंड जैसे मैंने बोला कि जैसे वुमेन सिक्योरिटी. एक्चुअली हम लोग देखते हैं कि वुमेन सिक्योरिटी बहुत कम मिलती है, जो कि कैब में अगर लेडीज़ ट्रैवल्स करे तो फॉर एम्प्लॉय ओनली, तो उसके साथ लेडी एम्प्लॉय होना कितना अहमियत रखता है ये मुझे अभी लगता है कि ऐसा होना चाहिए.
Right. You know, let me also point out that we did some background checks to find out, or we did some research to find out what these various aggregators are doing for background checks. Now, they've hired background verification companies, each Ola and Uber, and they do some background verification. But we must also point out that in our country, there is no database in our country at all between police stations. So if there's someone who has been, for whatever reason, arrested in one city for molestation or for any other sexual crime, and he moves across the country and finds employment, there is no way for one police station to check with the other police station. There's no online database where they can check and find out if this person has a previous track record. And without that database, all of this background checking is completely useless, because we will never know if there is a track record, and that's something the government needs to work on. I want to ask Priyadarshan this. How much would it cost, Priyadarshan, for an average low-end sedan or a hatchback to remove the child lock if the government were to mandate it? Would it cause taxis to go on strike?
Not really. It's a pretty simple fix, to be very honest. I mean, I don't know if I can put a number on that right now, but I don't think it's something that will cause any sort of problems in the daily running. It should take a few minutes at the most to get it done. I mean, it breaks my heart to think that we have to rely on government mandates to ensure safety for women in this country. But yeah, I mean, I think something like that could be done pretty easily.
So do this as an advisory, and we're going to run the footage of what you showed our reporter one more time for everybody watching at home, so you can tell your families, where is that lock, and how do I check before I get into the car whether the lock is on or off?
So the child locks are found only on the rear two doors, not on the front doors at all. On the rear two doors, when you open the door, the side of the door, or the door thickness where you see, you'll usually see a switch or a little notch out there, which will have a clear indication of which side to turn it to put the lock on or off. And it just takes a few seconds to check it. As soon as you open the door, it's pretty visible.
So you're saying check the doors of all cars before you get into them, because once you get into them, then nobody can help you.
I mean, it is exactly. It is really horrible to say that women's safety depends on them checking for these silly things, but that's what it has come down to, and it's just, yeah, it can save your life if you do it.
It can save your life if you do. So what you have to do is, before you get into any car that is not yours, ladies, if you're getting into the back of the car, tell your family as well, when you open the door, check the side of the door. There is a little switch, and the switch will indicate what is on and what is off. If the child lock is on, do not get into that car, because that driver obviously is ill-intentioned. There is no reason why the child lock in a taxi needs to be on at any given point of time. You have to check this before you get into the car. I'm really sorry, I put this up on social networking, on Facebook and Twitter, and somebody wrote back to me saying, how many things are we going to check as women in this country? But unfortunately, that is the country that we live in. We're constantly looking over our shoulders. We're constantly afraid. We're constantly worried about what's going to happen. 40 seconds in a lift with one man alone, and all of us are holding our bags up to our chest like this. That's the world we live in. Here's one more thing you have to check. Unfortunately, and I apologize to the other Indian women who are listening, this is the world that we live in. Shantanu Datta is on the phone line from Delhi. I'm opening up the phone lines to my panel. If you want to respond or you want to say something, please raise a finger, raise your hand so that I know you have something to say. But we're going to bring in viewers right now. Shantanu, go ahead. Shantanu, can you hear me? Shantanu? All right, we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Ramchandra Menon is on the phone line from Mumbai. Ramchandra Menon, if you can hear me, go ahead. You're on the show.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, sir. Shantanu Datta, if you can hear me, please go ahead. I don't have that much time.
Shantanu, I can hear you.
Please go ahead. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I can hear.
All right. I'm going to give my audio team a little time to brief everybody who's on the phone line. I'm going to go back to Nikita Anand. Nikita Anand, unfortunately, the onus again falls on the women. It is up to the women again to ensure their own safety, to check one more time, to look over their shoulders one more time, Nikita.
Unfortunately, yes, you're right. The onus is on the women to defend themselves. But before that, I'd like to say something, that I'm very glad that this topic is coming up and we're discussing about it, and your viewers are watching this and they're listening. And also a point that you raised earlier, that how many women are even aware of this feature? that should ideally be disabled. It shouldn't even be in a cab because there is no reason. No one's going to put a toddler into a cab all by himself or herself and send them away. So I'm so glad that this discussion is taking place, because after this debate, I'm going to call a few of my friends who I know who take cabs, and I'm going to ask them if they're even aware of this. Because like you said, awareness is your biggest weapon. And a lot of women aren't even aware of it. Regarding the one post you said that you shared this on social media, that women, when they get into a cab, just take those first few precious seconds and check whether the child lock is enabled or disabled. And for someone to say that how many checks do we have to do, well, I understand, where that is coming from. But at the end of the day, there are women who carry pepper sprays as well, right? Because you just don't know the intention of any person. And like you very rightly said, someone even in your lift, and it could be a question of 5 seconds or 10 seconds. But those are absolutely terrifying seconds for a woman in that predicament or in that situation. So, I'm very glad we're having this. And also to add to, you initially earlier asked if there is a list of what else can be done. The sticker suggestion, that sticker option, I think is absolutely brilliant. There's also another thing that I was thinking, that why not have a few ads as well? Like I remember when you had these women's safety apps that came out initially, there were a lot of these ads that were run on the television, even if it's just for a few days. Because that awareness quotient needs to be really built upon. The more women know about this, see, this is something that is in your control. The fact that a woman knows that before getting into a car, there is this feature that you can check. It takes hardly a few seconds. Changing the mentality of the Indian men, yes, it's a long road, and that is the route, and that's what we need to essentially work on, yes. But something like this is in your hands. I mean, I would embrace it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. And I want to also go back to Mr. Bhanot. Mr. Bhanot, you've been listening as well. Everybody's made suggestions, and you made very strong suggestions that the fitness tests that all taxis go through include a regular annual check on whether or not the child lock has been disabled. There are so many more things that we can do right now as far as taxis are concerned. And I just want to bring this up because my team is docketing everything that is being said on this show, and we will send this to Mr. Nitin Gadkari. There isn't a background check being done right now. A lot of the panic buttons that have been installed in these taxis don't work. We've had people, especially in the NCR Delhi region, who've pressed the panic button. Nothing has happened. The SOS button that is in the app, where you've got the taxi from, if you have no Wi-Fi, for whatever reason, if you've been driven to a part of the city that has no Wi-Fi or that has no internet coverage, your SOS button will not work. Neither the tracking system on the driver's phone nor on your phone will work if it's all dependent on the internet. Do you think that there's more that can be done, Mr. Bhanot, right now from the government's point of view to keep women safer?
Well, you see, let me say something. You see that getting an annual fitness certificate is a must, it's a mandatory. No vehicle can remain on the road if it does not have a fitness certificate. So in the inside door, there should be a sticker that this car does not have a child lock. This should be made, sticker should be made mandatory. Other thing is that government can think of the other electronic devices also, as you mentioned about the emergency button, which is being thought of for introduction in the buses and other areas, which is becoming gradually mandatory, and there is a standard which is under formation for that also. And I think similar things should be done in this also, and the standard for the child lock should be amended. There is an automotive industry standard that is called the AIS standard that should be changed, and there should be a clause written that in case of commercial vehicle, this child lock should not be mandatory. Otherwise, the homologation of the car will not be done because this is a mandatory feature. So the law has to be changed that for commercial vehicles, this has to be disabled. So I think you have to take care of the relevant clauses in amendment of the law.
And
the law has to be, as far as Rule 62 is the concerned fitness rule, it has to change.
Rule 62, we'll put that in our docket. Mr. Ramchandra Menon is on the phone line from Mumbai. Mr. Menon, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Faye, and it's really very nice of you to expose and bring awareness about these things. I want to give some suggestions. There could be a fail-safe interlock system introduced, which is not very difficult, wherein the driver cannot start the engine unless this is disabled, that the child lock is disabled. Once the passenger engages the cab, that system should incorporate this fail-safe method, wherein it will get disengaged by itself. That's one thing. It's not very difficult. Then, having said this fitness test the gentleman was talking about, it is mandatory and it should be done very, very promptly. And of course, not
yes.
The passenger should not lose the presence of mind ever. Should not never get distracted and should always show the presence of mind, because we never know who is driving you around. So
yes, unfortunately, you're so right, Mr. Menon. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in, that you can never let your guard down in this country, not even for a second. You have to constantly be on your guard. I know the other two ladies on this panel will agree with me. It's quite frankly exhausting to have to live like that all the time. I want to very quickly ask Priyadarshan, Mr. Menon's suggestion that the actual start or the ignition of the car be locked if the child lock is on, is that a possibility? It's too complicated.
It's way too complicated. It's a lot easier to just remove the child lock for taxis. It's a lot easier to that, and it need not be done by the manufacturers, because when you have certain vehicles which are sold to both commercial and private owners, it's the same car that comes off the assembly line. So it's at the end of the day, when the car gets registered to a certain customer, their things change. So the mandate has to come. It has to come for the operators to have those locks disabled or removed.
The other very important thing that I want you to tell our viewers, Priyadarshan, is that once the car is in motion, the driver cannot child lock you in from there. It is a manual switch, which means the person has to get out of the seat, walk around the car, open the door and physically lock you before you walk up to that car. So it can't be done once you sit down. So it's a one-time job to just check that switch that you can see on your screen right now, which is in the door, right?
Absolutely. The only thing you can do when the car is in motion is central lock the car, or some cars will central lock by themselves, but that doesn't stop you from opening the door in any case. If you pull the handle and the child lock is disabled, the door will still open. So that's no problem at all.
That's no problem at all. So it's just that one little switch and it's on both doors on either side. If you make sure that it's not on, that means that your door will open. So it's specific to each door. It is a manual switch. Sailesh is on the phone line from Mumbai. Sailesh, go ahead. Sailesh, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
Faye, first things first, I think your team is doing an amazing job of getting issues that touch citizens' lives. So compliments to you on that one. There is a simple suggestion that I have. The first thing that we do is operators generally do a lot of things on the fly, which means over the air, whether it is sending your OTP or whatever it is. I think all cab operators necessarily need to send out a text message the moment you engage the cab and the moment the cabbie has punched in the OTP. All you need to do is send a data message or an SMS message that says check for your child lock in case you don't want it, get it disabled. So I have a prompt then and there without any external support, that lets me decide whether I want a child lock on or not. As such, it's a safety feature. We should not compromise with it, and it's standard in Europe. So
so I understand what you're saying. It may be standard in Europe, but my argument is, yes, Yogesh Verma, my argument is that it's completely irrelevant when it comes to taxis in India. That it may be relevant for a private car, but for a taxi in India, I still don't understand why we need child lock. Yogesh Verma.
नहीं, मेरा तो इसमें एक और पहलू भी है. अगर आप इन दिनों के डेटास देखेंगे, तो ये जो क्वालिटी की कार जो मैन्युफैक्चर हो रही है और जो आ रही है, आप हर दूसरे दिन देखें तो कार बीच रोड पे जल जाती है. चलते चलते कार को आग लग जाता है. और नहीं, मैं इसके लिए बोल रहा हूँ, अगर इस टाइप का कहीं चाइल्ड लॉक लगा होगा और पीछे कोई भी बैठा होगा, तो वो ना कार से बाहर निकल सकता है, तो उसकी सिक्योरिटी के लिए भी ठीक नहीं है. और मेरे देखते देखते इस महीने में तो कम से कम 2 डजन से ज़्यादा केसेस हो गए. तो मुझे लगता है कि चाइल्ड लॉक पूरी तरह से ही निकालना चाहिए. और मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि चाइल्ड लॉक तो रहना ही नहीं चाहिए और इसको हटा ही देना चाहिए.
But Priyadarshan, is that true that we had cars self-combusting in India? I don't recall a case.
It's not as rampant or realistic as you would think. I mean, yeah, I mean, something, a car burns down, it gets a lot of coverage and you think, oh, this is a problem, but it's not necessarily a problem.
मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, इसके ऊपर अगर हम डेटा में जाएंगे तो आपको समझ में आएगा कि ये जो कार्स मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो रही है और इसके अंदर कोई बहुत बड़ा इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फॉल्ट है और जो यहाँ पर चल रहा है और इतने बड़े पैमाने पर आप जाकर जाइए इन हाईवेज के ऊपर आप देखिए कितनी गाड़ियां सेल्फ कंबशन में जल रही हैं.
एक मिनट, one second. Mr. Bhanot, how many cases of self combustion have we had in India specifically? I don't want to go off track with this debate. I want to stay on what we're talking about, which is safety for women and how that is compromised by the child lock facility in taxis. So very quickly, Mr. Bhanot, you agree, of course, and I also want you to answer that second question, which is that, because child lock is available in Europe, should we still continue to keep it in India, in our taxis at least?
Actually, the consumer awareness and the habits and the culture, European culture and Indian culture, you cannot compare. Actually, pardon?
Go ahead, sir.
No, you see that in Europe people are very enlightened, and that this sort of things do not happen the way it happens to our ladies in our country. So we have to find a unique solution which is valid for us. So at the time of a registration, because any car which goes for a commercial use has got to be registered by the RTO. So at the time of registration by the RTO should ensure that the child door lock is disabled totally. It is dismantled. So I think I am of the firm opinion that for the commercial use it should be totally banned. Other thing is, sticker should, wherever presently taxis are running in our country, it should be disabled and the sticker should be put inside the door that this car is disabled as far as child lock is concerned. Now somebody mentioned about the fires. It's a very complicated subject. Electronics nowadays, almost 40% or 45% electronics is there in the modern cars. It uses lot of wires, and sometimes people carry out lot of modifications also in the car, and they do not though, they make a mischief in the sort of a circuitry. Sometimes the fire takes place due to that also. Most of these fires also happen in the case of your CNG vehicles, where a small spark can generate an entire fire.
Right, but so I think it's safe to say, Priyadarshan, that whichever car you're in, whether it is your own car or it is a taxi, you should always know whether or not the child lock is on.
Absolutely agreed. Just getting quickly back to that fire point for a second.
Honestly, I don't want to be derailed by. I know that you are both tempted as auto experts, so we talk about the fires, but I don't have enough time to talk about fires right now. Nitin Raval is on the phone line from Bangalore. Nitin, go ahead.
Good evening. Yeah. Actually, I have a small suggestion, a very simple suggestion.
Yes.
We can have the best of both. We can have the lock as well as have the safety part by having the controls on the rear door.
Okay. So your suggestion is let's not do away with it completely. Have the control of the child lock in the rear seat. It's a manual control. It is in the rear door. You have to control it before you get into the car, at least for now until it's taken off completely. But I'll give you a chance to answer that question. One more caller. Ravi Nair is on the phone line from Mumbai. Ravi, go ahead.
Yeah, rather than attempting to remove it or not to remove the child lock, it's a technological advancement. We need to understand why are we discussing it. We are discussing it because women are being harassed, rapes are being attempted, and attempt to molestation is taking place in the vehicle. Why can't this buzzer switch be put closer to the? I mean, you need to add a buzzer switch rather than this talking about this. What do you call it? The one issue which we are discussing. You need to put a buzzer switch on the door so that it would operate like a beacon. Now the beacon is out for the VVIPs. Now we need to put a buzzer on the door, and once the buzzer is being pressed, you have all of the people. I mean, the vehicle is going to go all over the road, buzzing all around and creating a lighting scenario, and you will have all those people helping you out rather than my sister may be in Vashi, I may be in Borivali, my mother may be in Churchgate, I may be in Kandivali. How am I going to do an SOS or whatever? The best thing is to have a buzzer and people.
That's a very good point, Ravi, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to take this question to Mr. N.D. Mulla. N.D. Mulla, we've tested, and we've got people on the internet who also tested that these big red panic buttons that have been installed in some of these cabs, and not all of them have it, the cabs in the NCR region have it. People have pressed those big buzzers and no policeman has come, nothing has happened.
Well,
would you prefer then, do you think it makes more sense to take Ravi's idea, which is that if someone in the backseat presses that buzzer, that the whole car starts to make noise? Is that a better suggestion?
No, this suggestion is a very good suggestion. In fact, that was in my mind too. This is a good suggestion, but
go ahead.
Yeah, that is the problem. Ultimately, these are all the technologies which can be disabled by the drivers over a period of time. So what I suggest is the child lock with a control in the rear side is a better option for time being. As and when we experience or technology improve, there will be some suggestions coming through.
You know, my problem with that approach, Mr. Mulla, is that, like Abhijeet said at the beginning of this show, child lock costed him his wife. I think that let's take a look at it, let's see how it evolves is not okay with me, because more people will die while we are figuring out technology. That is a price I am not willing to pay. I think if there's something that causes a risk at all to women, just remove it. Figure it out later, go back to the drawing board, come back with a better option. Right now, the way it was designed in Europe, it doesn't work for us in India. And we need to be grown up enough to accept that everything that's working for Europe is not exactly a solution for us in India. Naresh is on the phone line from Delhi. Naresh, very quickly, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, Naresh, go ahead.
I just want to tell all the viewers that there is a simple way to check whether child lock is on or off. You don't have to look for the child lock and see it physically. All that needs to be done is try and open your car door. When you sit in the car, just try and open it once. If it opens from inside, that means the child lock is off.
And if it doesn't open from inside?
If it doesn't open from inside, child lock is on. You need to take care.
Well, Naresh, you know, I think that you've made a very commonsensical argument, but let me tell you that once you get in the car and you discover the child lock is on, you are effectively trapped by that driver and at the mercy of the driver. Now, again, for a man, it might be easy for you to turn around and say, if the child lock is on, you should be careful. For a woman, if the child lock is on, you could be dead. There is a difference in the way we treat situations, which is why I am saying it, and I'm saying it one more time. Any woman, before you get into a car that is not yours, check the door to make sure child lock is not on, because once you get in and close the door, you are at the mercy of the driver and anything could happen. I want to take this to Swati Sharma. Swati Sharma, it might seem simple for the men who are listening to say, open it. If it opens, that's like saying, you know, check a gas leak with a matchstick. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely. I think you guys are doing amazing that you guys are documenting and giving it out to the government. I would also like to make one more suggestion. Like, we have so many transport available, but why can't we have a woman-friendly Ola or a woman-friendly Uber wherein we book a share, obviously, because we get nominal rates? Why can't we have only women travelers? Because most of the time we do not know whom are we traveling with, or we do not know what are the intentions of the co-traveler. So why not have a woman-only Uber or an Ola wherein we can control the circumstances and we know that who we are traveling with? So far, I have not set any such commute wherein I can have this scenario and I know that I'll be traveling with women only. So these women-only cars can also have live coverage and live surveillance. They should have a protocol button and no child lock, obviously.
Right. That's a good point, and we'll add it to the docket that we're going to send to the government. Balakrishna is on the phone line from Mumbai. Balakrishna, go ahead.
Good evening.
Yes, we can hear you.
One of the panelists had mentioned that these Ola and Uber cabs should go for this annual certification.
They do, sir. They have to be annually certified once a year. The suggestion was during that certification, the government should make sure that the child lock has been disabled.
Yeah, but if they are annually certified and they also certify that the child lock has been disabled, there should be some sort of a sticker put inside the taxi which the person using the taxi can see to be sure that it has been properly disabled.
Yes.
And it has been certified as such.
Right, that's a very good point, and like pointed out by this panel over the last 1 hour, that can only be done if we inform enough people. It's up to us. If you watch the show tonight, call up whomever you know, put it on your WhatsApp groups, share the videos, talk about it at parties and at dinner parties. Tell everyone you know about the child lock. In the meantime, the only weapon we have against this is information. We have to make sure that information goes everywhere. Also, Priyadarshan, I wanted to come to you about that idea of, make a buzzer that sets the car going with noise and with lights. The problem with that is that you will have someone who turns around and says, what if there's a child in the backseat who presses that buzzer? There'll be a child lock for the buzzer that's meant to battle the child lock. So the idea really is to keep it as simple as possible. And we're back to where we started, remove the child lock.
Absolutely. I completely agree on this. For a family car, yes, I want the child lock, because if I'm carrying children in the back, even though they might be strapped into a child seat, there's a good chance they can reach and open the door. So I want to have that option for my family car. For a cab, there is no need to have one. There might be a rare scenario where I'm traveling with a child next to me and who grabs the handle. That's a very rare scenario.
But you know what happens if you're traveling with your child next to you and that child is grabbing the handle in India? This is our system of child lock. Chup it. Okay? And we listen to our parents. When our parents tell us not to touch the handles, we don't touch the handles. You make sure your child stays away from the door. You don't have to put in a complicated system that risks lives because your child might play with the handle.
No, I agree. But of course, if you have traveled with children, you know that no matter what you say or what you do, they will always grab something that they shouldn't be grabbing. But again, that's a rare scenario that can be dealt with. That's fine. I think it's good to not have a child lock for a commercial vehicle, and it can be removed. It's the easiest of jobs to remove the child lock.
Right.
So any car that goes to get registered as a commercial vehicle can have that, must have that child lock removed.
I think we should also refer to the fact that in this country, while we're talking about putting child locks on cars to keep children from playing with the doors, we have children sitting on petrol tanks of motorcycles without helmets. We have children sitting in autos, sometimes hanging over the rail of the autos. We see how they go to school and come back. This is the world we live in. And we have to be realistic about the fact that when you tell a child don't do it, and often in India the child listens, at least I want to believe. I want to thank my panel today for being so intelligent. And I want to personally say this, given where television news is today in our country, the fact that we had a 1 hour discussion that is intelligent, that is respectful of everyone and everyone's views, that shows that we still have something left to give in this industry. Everybody on this panel has been so supportive. And this is a campaign that we will take up here on Mirror Now. We will put forward. And I love the fact that everyone from the government, including Mr. Yogesh Verma, who's here today, has been extremely supportive of suggestions that have come in. We will work out a docket. We will circulate it among everybody on this panel, including Abhijeet Pujari, so brave, who has said he will fight constantly to make sure that no other woman has to go through what his wife went through, and no other husband should have to say what he had to say tonight. To the women who are watching, to the men who are watching, information is our weapon. Make sure everybody you know knows about the risks of child lock. Make sure you never get into a car again without checking. Stand with us as we fight to make this country safer. I understand that societally we have to change, but in the meantime, these are the small things that we can change on the ground to make sure that you and I live in a safer, more respectful India. Thanks for watching.